Gentilissimo auditorio tutto, benvenuti quest'oggi a questo nuovo appuntamento di Quattro chiacchiere e un caffè. Siamo qui con Peter Broadbend e questo è il motivo per cui we will switch our language in English. So Peter, we met first time in Arezzo a lot of years ago. But it was in 2013, first time speaking about Paris and Stanford and English romantic music. Mm-hmm. But just 10 years before, you had an atelier in Europa Cantat in Barcelona, speaking about Tavener, Raul Tavara and Tariq O'Regan. So, did you ever met them?
I met John Tavener and I gave a first performance of one of his pieces, very briefly. I met him briefly. The piece was quite long. But
Can imagine.
I know Tariq O'Regan very well. And Raul Tavara, I'm sorry I never met. Wonderful composer. But I've been lucky to meet and work with a lot of composers over the last so many years. And it's always very, very good to know the person as well as their music. Maybe sometimes they can be not so easy to know, but it helps you to understand something about the way that they work.
So was John Tavener so spiritual as a man as his music is?
That's a very good question. I didn't know John Tavener well. I met him. He was very ill. For a lot of his life, he was very ill. And he lived maybe 30 years longer than expected because of the condition that he had. But I know people who did know him, and they said he was not essentially, in everyday life, very spiritual, but thoroughly enjoyed life, including expensive cars and good food and good wine. So he was completely normal, except when talking about his music, when he became very spiritual.
You're director of training for the Association for British Choral Directors, ABCD.
I was.
Okay.
Yes, I recently handed over, but yes.
How do this association works?
It works as a voluntary organisation for the most part. We have only one paid employee now, or 1.5. But it's a little modelled on the ACDA in America, but we have never persuaded British conductors to feel the need to be a member of our association yet, so far. We have, having said that, we have 700 members approximately, and we try as an organisation over the last 15 years maybe, to be active in helping the training and support of conductors. I think maybe when the association started off, there was a feeling that it's a very lonely job. We know, being a conductor, you spend a lot of time on your own. So it was a good thing to have an association which would have a chance for people to meet and to discuss and so on. But also, after a while, some of us felt that we needed to do more practical help, which is how my position eventually came about, because we started a number of courses for conductors, short courses, but also longer, more intensive courses to provide the support and the training that one needs for this job. I think for a long time in Britain, maybe in some parts of Britain still exists, the feeling that if you're going to work with amateur musicians, you don't need to be a professional. I'm talking now not about the people who do the job, but I'm talking about the musical establishment. There is a big divide between the amateur and the professional, or maybe the other way around, the professional and the amateur. And with the professional approach to music, there was a lot of feeling that, well, we don't have a lot of professional choirs, only opera choruses, the BBC singers, and one or two other ad hoc organisations. So why do we need to train conductors? Because there is very little work. And it's still a struggle, I think, in parts of we have to work very hard in Britain, in our musical establishment, to explain that the singers may be amateur, but they need the security of a professional conductor, both in terms of their voices and in terms of their musicianship, to make the improvements they need. And I think we are beginning to get there, but it has been a struggle. We have a tradition in England which is based very largely on church music, and we have a fantastic, amazing cathedral choirs and university college choirs, Oxford, Cambridge, and so on. And there was always the feeling that if you were an organist, therefore you could conduct choirs. This was not just a feeling. The late John Scott, who was a wonderful musician, and he was organist and choirmaster at St Paul's Cathedral for some years. Fantastic organist, John. Wonderful organist. Very fine musician. But he told us that when he was given the job at St Paul's Cathedral, he had never, ever conducted a choir before. And he needed a lot of help. He was honest enough to say this. And he did some damage in his initial years to the boys' voices at St Paul's Cathedral. He admitted it because he hadn't had any vocal training or any understanding of what it was, because he was an organist. And the assumption in Britain was organists conducted choirs. Now we're not there, because at St Paul's Cathedral we now have, as the director of music, not an organist at all, but a singer. So that shows that the world is beginning to change. John, I have to say, became a very fine choral conductor, but there were years when damage was done, and he knew it. And this was, I think, he was one of the people who helped us really to work with the establishment to say, you know, it's not about standing there waving your arms. It is about your understanding of the vocal technique involved and so many things, of course. So now I think ABCD has established itself as part of the movement towards healthier approach to voices, alongside several other organisations in the UK.
Peter,
That was a long answer.
You just spoke about the BBC singers, so you were
Indeed.
their conductor. But you are also conductor of the Joyful Company of Singers.
Mm-hmm.
I just read that the Joyful Company has a fund for young composers and conductors. How does it work?
Well, it's worked in two ways. We set up this fund maybe 7 years ago now, with the intention of encouraging young composers, young conductors, and therefore young singers. It was intended, hopefully, to bring in also younger singers to our choir. There was a selfish part of it, but also it has worked very well, because we had a junior fellowship for a conductor to work with the choir as a sort of assistant conductor, come and sing in the choir and to conduct. And we had over the last few years, six choral fellowships. And these young people really got the benefit of working with a very good instrument and encouragement, and I was able to give them the opportunity to conduct not only in rehearsal but to work in concerts, including a very big major concert we did as a 25th 30th anniversary concert, whatever, at a major London concert hall, and our then junior fellow conducted several movements of the Parry Songs of Farewell, which was a really lovely for her. She was a young, very gifted young conductor, and so it's good for the young people. It's good for the choir to have somebody different in front of them, and it's good in all ways. And for the young composers, we've done two things. We had a composition competition. I'll say that again. So composition competition, and the composer who won this, the selection committee for the competition was made up of composers, mostly young composers: Kerry Andrew, Gabriel Jackson, Judith Bingham, three fine composers, and another conductor, George Vass, and myself. And the winning composer was Australian, who had been studying in England at Oxford. He was doing a doctorate at Oxford, and very, very, very good piece, which got several performances as part of it. And in fact, the first performance was given by our then junior fellow, so it was a double whammy, so to speak. We had two young people involved. And the most recent commission we have done as part of this was from a young composer called Toby Young, who is a very talented composer. And it was a great pleasure working with him. I've known him since before he was born. His father is a pianist who works with me very often. And Toby is a very gifted and very intelligent young composer who had been working, when we started to talk about the commission, he had been working with a dance company, the Rombert Dance Company, which is a very old established, had been an old established ballet company which has moved into contemporary dance and become one of the leading lights of contemporary dance movement in the UK. So we discussed the composition, and we made it a joint commission with two other choirs, which is always a good way to work. So there are three choirs involved in providing the money, and therefore automatically there are at least three first performances, which doesn't always happen. But our performance, backtracking, we decided that since he was really interested in the dance, he would like to provide a composition which was linked to dance, closely linked to dance. And as I said, he's a very imaginative composer, a very highly intelligent young man. And he chose some wonderful, wonderful texts to set. And he put them together as a suite, as in the form of an 18th century suite. So the dance link was sort of obvious. So you had an allemande and a gigue and so on. And the texts were all mostly contemporary texts. This was the only problem, that we still haven't got copyright clearance on all the texts. Because he was doing a fellowship in Cambridge, he was free to set anything he liked, and it wasn't a problem. But that finishes when his fellowship finishes, and we still haven't got clearance for the last, and possibly the best piece I know. we can't put the words in the programme in case we get prosecuted. It's a fantastic setting of Maya Angelou, the American, wonderful American poet, and it's a really, really great setting. But Maya Angelou's people have not responded yet. The piece is so imaginative and so different. So we had a performance where it was danced, and we got a young dance group to realise the music physically in dance. I don't know what it looked like, unfortunately, because I was with my back to the dancers, and the video, I still 2 years later, the video still has not been sent. I think it must have been bad. But it was a great opportunity, and I want to do it again, and I want to do it lots of times. And if anybody is interested, do ask me about this piece, because it's not. The music is not very, very difficult. There's a wonderful variety in it. There are wonderful changes of tempo. He likes accelerandos. If you're good at accelerandos, you'll love this piece. But it's got some wonderfully contrasting textures, and there is a wonderful slow movement near the end, a saraband, which is a very simple and sad poem called After Orlando, and it was after the nightclub massacre in America, where a lot of gay people were killed. And it's so simple and so beautiful. And the Maya Angelou setting at the end is fantastic.
Maybe just the camera crashed.
Yeah.
And in 2016, you were awarded with a Knight's Cross of Merit of Hungary. What are your relationships with Hungary?
I have to say that my relationships with Hungary are purely musical, in the sense that I have been visiting Hungary and working in Hungary for since 1996, however long that is, 22 years. And I have a lot of Hungarian friends, and they are kind enough to recognise I love Hungarian music. I love music. I don't feel English, except when I'm conducting. I paraphrase George Solti here. The great George Solti, who was a fantastic conductor, was asked, does he feel, after many years not living in Hungary, did he feel Hungarian? And he said, yes, when I conduct Hungarian music, I feel Hungarian. But when I conduct English music, I feel English. When I conduct French music, I feel the same. Absolutely. I had some wonderful compliments about my conducting of Hungarian music from Hungarians, but I identify with the music so very clearly. It was Bartók that made me want to go to Hungary. And once I'd been to Hungary, I realised the deep relationship of the music and the people. It is so close, it is so tangible. Still, although times have changed very much, although the communist regime has gone, it was obviously a very joining thing then, but also something that the communist regime used, as they did in other countries, to unite the people and to keep them, if you like, is this cynical? To keep them happy? To keep them calm? We know that, for example, these great Bulgarian choirs that we used to hear in Llangollen in Wales, every year there would be a fabulous choir coming from Bulgaria. They worked very, very hard because it was the only way they could ever get out of their country, even for a short time. But Hungary, the closeness to their folk music and their folk dance music is very, very, very strong. And I don't mean it in a nationalistic way. I know there are problems with the politics in Hungary, which had we several days to talk about it, we could talk about. But I think it is a really very important part of the Hungarian nature that they take music very seriously, very, very seriously. So I love their passion for the music, and I love the way that the language, the Hungarian language, which is difficult, comes out in the music of particularly Bartók and Kodály, obviously.
We have a tradition in this kind of interviews, just to take a card and answer to one very casual question.
Okay. This could be dangerous, couldn't it?
Oh, what is the book that changed your life?
Can I have another question?
No.
I don't know. That's very difficult. What book has changed my life? I don't know. I read much less frequently now than I used to read as a young man. And I read, as a child, I read all the time. And so I've got an awful lot of books inside there. Which book has changed my life? I don't know.
Could also be Mickey Mouse.
I'm not very fond of Mickey Mouse, actually. I had an experience.
Donald Duck.
I had an experience with Disneyland in Paris, which I don't. That's a really very good question. Which one actually changed my life? I read a lot of biographies at one period in my life. A lot of biographies, and of musicians and of composers, and maybe it was one of those that actually changed my life, but I don't know. I'm not sure I can answer it. Not with one book. With several different books at different stages in my life, maybe. But I mean, I should say the Bible if I meant it, but I don't. I would say maybe a biography of John Barbaroli, the English conductor, who I admired enormously, who I learnt so much from watching and being in rehearsal, seeing him at work. But and I already admired him, but when I read the biography, Michael Kennedy's wonderful biography, I realised the suffering that he had, the physical suffering that he had gone through to achieve the standards of music making that he did, and what he managed to ignore, and the energy that he put into his music. So maybe that's the one. Michael Kennedy, who I met, was a wonderful editor of a national newspaper, but also a biographer of Elgar and of Barbaroli, and a writer of wonderful books on music, and a great music critic himself. A fine man, lovely man. And so that's a double reason, I think.
And our very last question is, if you ever will meet your young Peter Broadbend, what could suggest to him, and what would he suggest to you?
I know what I'd say to him, and it would be work a lot harder, really. But work a lot harder believing in yourself, because it was a long time before I really believed in what I could do. And it was, I came from a sort of very, very English middle-class family where music was, it was Sir Thomas Beecham who said that the English don't really like music, but they do like the noise it makes. And there is, my father typified that, and they didn't really understand music, and I needed more encouragement and discipline, the two together, and it was all a bit too sort of, oh no, fine, it's who you like. So I didn't work hard enough as a young boy and as a young man. And what he would say to me is, this is the question they always ask, isn't it? That's the more difficult one to say. What would I have said then? I would have said, well, you're very lucky. I have been very, very lucky. I've been so fortunate in my wife, in my friends, in my colleagues that I meet through this business, through its fantastic people like Lorenzo, and people like all the great conductors that one's met here, and the people I've worked with on the juries. And how lucky have I been? I mean, to travel all over Europe and to travel to other parts of the world, and through music. And I think the people one meets in this world, particularly in the choral world, in the non-professional choral world. Everybody who is involved in it is so passionate and works so hard, and they're such good people that then I would have said as a young man looking at this, I said, you've been bloody lucky actually.
So, thank you for Peter. It's always a pleasure.
Niente.
Grazie a tutti voi, l'appuntamento è ancora per domani alle 14:30. Buona serata.